Here we go.
Are we good?
Yes.
You can see my screen. Okay.
Yes, I see you, but
hello,
not in
everyone.
presentation mode. There you go. Okay.
Are we good now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Angie Manfredi. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am coming to you from New Mexico. And when Greta first approached me about doing this session, I wanted to call it Books You Might Have Missed Because the World Was on Fire. But we decided to just instead go with 2020 ICYM in case you missed it. This is my contact information. That's my email address. And that's my Twitter handle. I'm super findable on Twitter because I'm there all the time. Like right now while I'm talking to you, I'm like wishing I was tweeting. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I'm a librarian, a writer, an editor. I've been a librarian for almost 15 years. And I most recently had Greta's job in Iowa. I was the youth services consultant for the State Library of Iowa. And in 2019, I started doing a series of webinars called Check It Out. And they were monthly looks at the best books for 0 to 18 published. They were super popular. My librarians loved them and I loved doing them. And so this session is really modeled on that, but it's going to be an overview of all of 2020. And so we're going to kind of start with what we'll cover and what we won't cover. So the first thing is what we are going to cover. We're going to do a lot of new books for ages 0 to 18. And the first thing I want to repeat what Greta just said, this PowerPoint presentation will be made available to you after this session is over. So if you are really busily writing notes and you can't get everything down, do not worry about that. You will get this as a PDF when the session is over. If there is a link in this, it is a live link and you can visit it at any time. And here's the part I really want to stress, especially because I'm doing a whole year. Even when I did this for a month, when I would do this for a month at a time, I had to leave stuff out. So for a year, it's not even close. We cannot possibly cover everything. So what I'm going to give you here are both some highlights and some of my personal favorites, but also I'm going to try to show you some things that we can see that this is trends that are happening in publishing. And I'm also, because I worked in a public library for 12 years, I'm going to also give you tips and tricks for how you can use these books in public library settings. And really, like, I know that many of you are from small and rural libraries. That was the majority of the libraries I dealt with in Iowa. And I understand that you do not have that much money for collection. And so what we really want to focus on here are books that you are worth your money. And I also want to say, I'm going to try really hard. I am not going to be telling you about the Newbery winner, which is amazing. And you should read it. It's called How to Trap a Tiger by Tay Keller. If you haven't already read it, I'm not going to be telling you about the Newbery winner. I'm not going to be telling you about a book that's been on the New York Times bestseller list for 36 weeks. The goal here is to really bring some books that you hopefully have never heard of before. And this is really important. I always say this at the beginning. Weeding helps your library bloom. I really, really, really always encourage you to really weed. I know it can be difficult. I know we can have what we feel like these emotional connections to books, but weeding is how books and gardens grow. So as always, I want to bring back a reminder that you're going to say to yourself, well, I have to keep this book from 1976 because it's the only book we have. You do not. You can go slow, but I really want to remind you, especially before any collection development session, that weeding helps your library bloom. And tied to that, we want to say we're doing all of this because your collection matters. Your library collection matters. I know that in the past year, like everything has been like one fire crisis after another. And you're like, I've got to provide hotspots and how to make masks and do a vaccine clinic. But your collection, your library collection, it tells the story to your community of who is welcome at your library, who is seen at your library. It matters. We can tell it matters because of who it makes mad. But it also matters because it keeps us relevant and it keeps us current. And so we're doing this session because we believe that having current, relevant, high interest titles for all of our patrons, we believe that matters. We believe that your collection matters. This is worth your time and it's worth your investment. And that is enough. Let's get to the books. 2020 was hard. We do what we can with what we are. I say that all the time. You might say to yourself, I can only buy 2 or 3 books from this presentation. That's okay. That's okay. I'm also giving you ideas to explore because the backlist is beautiful. which is a great lesson. A lot of these books are already in paperback, or the second book in the series is already out. So I want you to keep that in mind when I'm throwing all these titles at you and it feels like you're being like overwhelmed and like a rush is coming over you. It is okay to take this bit by bit and work at the pace that works with your library and the time that you have and the staff that you have and the budget that you have. But even a small start is a start. I break these down by literal names. I don't do ages. All books are for all people. No, I don't do ages. So we don't say these are the best books for 0 to 6. These are the best books for 7 to 12. This is word books and picture books. Again, I'm sorry for everything I've left out. This is what we can only call an overview. Let's do this. Is there anybody doing board books like Steve Light? I don't think so. So this is Up Cat, Down Cat. This is the companion to his really popular book about light. It is a book of opposites. This is a classic board book. It really has all of the features. You can always tell, I think, when a board book was written for an adult and when board book was written for children. This is a board book that was written for children, our earliest readers, straight and curvy. I love that this is in their tails. Right? It's in the modeling of their tails. You can ask a kid what is straight and what is curvy. You also the detail that Light has put in on there. If you see the little mouse, see a little blue mouse is on every page. It's a fun look and find thing. Black and white. Look at the way that he has done contrasts here. The black cat in front of the white background, the white cat in front of the black background. Details like this is the stuff that makes his board book stand out. I truly think if you are not familiar with the Steve Light board books, they're amazing for if you do group readings. They're also amazing for one-on-one sharing. To me, they're like really the epitome of what the form can do. I think they're the epitome of what we're talking about when we talk about board books that were made for our earliest and littlest readers. Oh, this is Curls by Ruth Foreman, illustrated by Geneva Bowers. It is the first of a 4-book board book set that she has. The second one came out this year. It's called Glow. It's one of my favorite books of the year. I love Ruth Foreman is a poet, and I really believe, I've come to believe lately that nobody does board books better than poets. The richness of language, but also the ability to really focus in on a story with a very few amount of words. So Curls is a celebration of hair on Black and brown girls, but it's also a really rich, evocative, really the kind of language building we're looking for this set. Again, if you're talking about something that would be really great as a choral reading that you would do in a LAPSIT program or a Baby and Me program, or something that you would have as a set, Shine Big, Hair Love, Up Soft, Black Brown, Thick Curl, Sun Crown. When I was talking about Glow at the last one of my last workshops, I read the whole thing. I just couldn't stop because the way the language flows, and see how few words that is. That's 4 words on every page. That's 4 words on every page, and there's so much. It's a great early literacy thing. Everything by her. There's Curls is out now. Glow is out, came out in 2021, and she has 2 more coming. Love it, love it, love it. Exemplifies the board book form. Look at the light on this one. Look at the light on this one. Sun Crown. Look at the light. I could talk about this one all day. Okay, so now we're going to do some books that I think are great for story time, that I think are great for sharing with our younger readers. And I also think when you're always saying, I've done the same 10 books in story time over and over again, here's some ones I think that'll refresh story time. Again, I could do a whole session on story time. Invite me back, we'll do that. Bedtime for Sweet Creatures by the living legend, Nikki Grimes, and illustrated by Elizabeth Zunon. This already in 2021, it has a companion about bath time. It is about a child who does not want to go to bed and all of the bargains that mama and papa make on the way to bed. This is a book that has animals, it has noises, it's interactive, and it also tells a really familiar story that parents are often asking about. And I love that it ends with the baby in the bed with parents. It's a real close, intimate, rich book. And the second book, Off to See the Sea, is about the baby doesn't want to take a bath. And I've read that one with my niece about 800 times, and she just asked for it over and over again. And you can see a little bit, you're going to roar like a bear. It's interactive. It's really great. When We Are Kind by Monique Graysmith. Illustrated by, I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Nicole Neidhart. Monique Graysmith is a member of is Cree and Lakota, and Nicole Nedi is Dine. And this is I love this. There are so many kind books right now. And one of the things I love about this one is that it also talks about ways that kids can be kind to themselves. So it says, I'm kind when I get sleep. I'm kind when I'm grateful. I'm kind when I take my dog for a walk. Very simple, repetitive use of the word kind, amazing social emotional learning, intergenerational families, an amazing look at contemporary Indigenous life. Obviously, everything Monique Graysmith does, masterpiece, perfect, beyond words. But I think this just really has a lot of building blocks for different ages. The illustrations from Nicole Neidhart, really incredible. And I think this is another one really great building. And again, I know there's a lot of kind books, but oftentimes they're really like, it's a moral about being kind. It's like a metaphor for being kind. This gives some real specific examples you can dig in with kids about what does kindness look like and mean, and how does kindness connect us. Okay, again, this is another one. When I read this, I was like, I have to do it in story time right away. This is Let's Dance by Valerie Bowling. It's illustrated by me. It's amazing. It looks at dance all across the world. It's written in short, poppy. This is a book for when you're ready to get up and start moving. This is a book that also talks, one of the things I really love about this is that Bowling talks about that everybody has their own way of dancing, and you can dance in a way that works for your body. So it's not the kind of thing, it has adaptive language already written into the text. I really enjoyed that. I loved that at the end, she included a note about where all the dances were from. So it was like, if you want to learn more about the cha-cha, if you want to learn more about Irish dance, if you want to learn more about hip hop, but it's really short, again, has really rich language, really great onomatopoeia in this one. So a lot of fun. I hope that all of you have already bought and obsessed over this book. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. This is The Old Truck by Jared and Jerome Pumphrey. They're brothers. The old school classic design look on this. They created over 250 individual stamps for this book. One of the brilliant, and there are so many brilliant parts about this book. One of the brilliant parts about this book, the truck never moves location. So you can turn the page, every page in the truck over the years stays in the same place. The Old Truck already has a companion book out this year called The Old Boat. It's equally great, really visually appealing graphics that we see right here, but also a story about farming, about a girl who grows up to work on her family farm and restores the old truck. I could see myself reading this in story time. I could see myself having the conversations about it with it. I could see like building an activity of stamping that goes along with this. There's just so much in this. There's also the truck in this gets to have dreams. I love everything about it. I hope that they will do this for like the old like train, just like, let's do it forever. Let's just like make him forever. So this is The Old Truck. I see it. This is a book that really has stuck with me visually over the year. So this is the part now where I asked all the book collections are. And when I ask how your holiday book collections are, you think about your Christmas and Halloween books. And that's cool. But I also want to remind you that when we say holiday books, we mean all holidays for all children. And so these were two really great holiday books that came out last year that I thought, you know, I think would be great refreshers to anybody collections. I think there would be great updates. And one is Benny's Diwali by the great adult author who's now started to write YA books, Thridi Umrigar, and it's illustrated by Nidhi Chanani. And it is about a girl who shares about the celebration of Diwali with her class and how beautiful and special it is. And the illustrations and the story and the way she shares what Diwali means, really great. And Alex Good Fortune by Benson Shum, which is about Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year. Specifically in this case, it's Chinese New Year. It's super cute, as you can tell from the little cute people in illustrations, and it's basically Alex explaining to her friend the traditions of Chinese New Year. It's really cute, really kind of basic. This one is a lot lighter in text. And again, these are just, again, so much of what I'm showing you right now. The first couple were about, we're going to refresh our storytime books. We're going to think about new ways to approach storytime. And these are, I want you to look at your collection. I want you to see gaps and think about those gaps in bigger ways. Think about those gaps in like forest instead of tree ways. And these are just two great examples that I think would be awesome to round out collections. Not every picture book is for story time. Some picture books are for taking home. Some picture books are for pouring over and over again. This is Happy County by Ethan Long. These are if you are looking for Richard Scarry, these are great Richard Scarry read-alikes. There's already been 2 this year. This is Hello World and Sun and Moon Together. They take place in Happy County. There are mazes, maps, games, comic panels. There are count how many signs you see. There are learn about weather. There are so much detail goes into these. These are larger sized. These are the kind of books that we take home, that we pour over, that we spend time with, that we look at every little detail of. And that's so important to so many of our picture book readers. I'm obsessed with this series. I can't wait to see what else he does. And of course, it's Ethan Long, and he's really great. Your Name is a Song by Jamila Tompkins Bigelow, illustrated by Luisa Uribe. I hope I got that right. I practiced, but this is a book about getting people's names right. And this is about a mom who encourages her daughter to hear the beauty in her name. I loved everything about this book. I especially loved that the pronunciations were included, that kids were encouraged to practice, and that also the dignity of having your name pronounced correctly was really encouraged and emphasized. And the illustrations, of course, are beyond compare as our young narrator imagines all the beautiful places and ways that her name is taking her. Again, this is a little bit longer, so this would be a story time for bigger kids, or this would be a book that you could do for class visits. I think if you were going to classes, even virtually, this is a great thing about understanding and respecting who your classmates' names are. The author created a video that goes with this that also has the pronunciation of all the names inside of it. It's also a great portrait of a contemporary loving Muslim family. Just everything about this book, it's just so great. This is a series I'm obsessed with. So this is a series from Charles Bridge called Storytelling Math. I love every title in here. They started off with a set of board books from Grace Len. This is one of the titles that came out in 2020, and there are so many great ones in 2021 and 2022 coming. This is Luna's Yum Yum Dim Sum by Natasha Yim, illustrated by Violet Kim. And this series in the title looks at division and fractions. So like, how can they divide up 3 buns among 5 siblings? And the whole goal of this series of Storytelling Math is introducing kids to basic math concepts through stories. And they're doing it cross-culturally. There's one just came out about size and estimation by Art Colson, who's an Indigenous author. There's ones about patterns. They're so great because they're tied to the story. And I think they have so many natural STEM connections. Every one of these that I've read, I could see myself building a program around. I could see creating like a whole series of STEM stuff around this that explains the connections between math and stories, and how we find math in everyday life and we use math in everyday ways. And we've been talking about that in librarians and programming for so long, and I love to see publishing respond to it. So this one's really cute, and of course they'll make you hungry, but I recommend everything in this series from Charles Bridge, Storytelling Math. I think, again, this is a really interesting and new thing that picture books are expanding, and they're really responding to the kind of demands that we've had for a while, and that we've said, I wish there were more, I wish there were more, I wish there were more. So this one's super cute, but I love them all, including the Grace Lynn board books. So this is going to wrap us up in picture books, believe it or not. Like I said, I could literally do like 5, I could do one just on like nonfiction picture books. And I do want to say right now, there is not near enough nonfiction in this presentation, and I am sorry about that, but I only had an hour. So please invite me back to do one just about nonfiction. But I wanted to wrap up picture books with these 2 titles. So one is How to Solve a Problem by Ashima Shirashi, and it's illustrated by Yao Shou. Some of you might have heard of Ashima before. She's very famous. She started bouldering when she was 6 years old. And by the time that she was 9, she had cleared like some of the hardest climbing routes in the world. And a thing that I did not know before I read this book and watched a documentary about rock climbing that I hated, but it won an Oscar, is that when you're in rock climbing, rock climbers call boulders problems. And so they think, how am I going to get through this problem? And this book is written with that in mind. And it's written about when things are hard in life, how do we go through the steps to solve a problem. It's a longer picture book, but after the year that everybody has had, I think that it's more relevant than ever. I also love that she talks repeatedly in this about what it was like to be a kid doing this. She's 20 now. She's still a kid. She was talking about what it was like to be a kid doing this and what it's like to fall and get back up. I really loved this book. I thought it was really unique and moving. And All of a Sudden and Forever by Chris Barton, illustrated by Nicole Shue. This was released in April for the 25th anniversary of the Oklahoma City bombing. But it really, to me, it felt more relevant than ever because it's very much a book for our youngest readers about how bad things sometimes happen, but that healing can come from that, and that it's okay to feel sad and it's okay to acknowledge something scary has happened and kind of a collective trauma. Again, relevant perhaps. Also, the Oklahoma City bombing is a significant historical event. I know it doesn't feel like that to those of us that remember it happening on TV, but I also thought this was a really nuanced and careful way to introduce it to kids in a way that makes it relevant in their lives. So that's what we're wrapping picture books up with. Everybody take a deep breath. I would love to hear in the chat, although I'm barely looking at it. I'd love to hear in the chat if you have any questions or comments. If you've already shared some of these books, what thoughts you have about them, or what you would say to other librarians about them, or if you saw one that was new and you're excited about. We would love to hear that. Other people love talking about books. It's really the most exciting thing there is. Give a big stretch. Here we go into the big one. Readers and chapter books. Again, just giving you overviews of what we're seeing. This is Fox and Rabbit by Beth Ferry, illustrated by Gergely Dodas. I looked everywhere for how to pronounce that. I hope that's correct. And Bun Bun and Bon Bon by Jess Keating. Now, see if this sounds familiar. Two opposite best friends, one of them is a little nervous and one of them's a little more gregarious, have a series of adventures. Does that sound like any enormously popular series at your library? Okay. One of the things we've really seen publishing respond to in this age category is trying to find our next Gerald and Piggy, and also understanding the ways that books written on that level help our youngest readers begin to gain confidence in reading, and also how to understand dialogue. And we hook comic readers really early. So Fox and Rabbit and Bun Bun and Bon Bon are first in a series. Bun Bun and Bon Bon is from an imprint that Scholastic has dedicated entirely to this. And so this is what we're looking like at the text. So this is Fox and Rabbit. Again, you can see we have a lot of dialogue. We have the bubbles, we have the comic panels. So this is a comic, but it's also a reader. And that's a huge thing we see in this age category right now. There's way more in 2021, including several publishers launching lines specifically about this. So these are just two from 2020. There's so much more in 2021, and there's more coming. It's a combination, not even a combination, it's both. It's a hybrid, it's both. It's both a reader and a comic. And for so many kids, this is going to be their introduction to comics, and it's going to get them hooked for the rest of their lives. Yay! But it's also kind of, it helps build reading confidence. And also it helps build that feeling that we just love this book. I can read it on my own. I feel really confident about it. And that is the Elephant and Piggy formula, right? Bun Bun didn't have a friend. Hello, leaf. Hello, clouds. Hello, flowers. See the panels? Don't worry, Bun Bun's going to meet a piece of candy and become friends with them. So that these are two, they're really cute. There's additional volumes already released in these, and I'm sure there will be more coming. And it's also something we really see in this age cohort. So okay, I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of these really fast, because this is what we call like our magic treehouse cohort. I know that many of you have already pulled these out to make them their own category, or you're thinking about that. And one of the things you should know is that publishing has finally responded to us begging for more titles like this. These are what we would consider the 80 to 112 pages, highly illustrated on almost every page, and really kind of introducing us to all varieties of genre fiction. So there's 3 lines spotlighted here. Quix, which is from Aladdin, Quix. Acorn, which is from Scholastic, and Harper Chapters, which is from HarperCollins. They all are kind of built around that same thing. I selected 3 of my personal favorites: Giger the Robot, which is like Amelia Bedelia meets robots, Shadow in the Woods and Other Scary Stories, which is the book I would have killed for, is a weirdo little 7-year-old who loved scary stories. The kid in that first book, he gets eaten by the creature. My husband screamed. And I loved it. And 13th Street, The Battle of the Bad Breath Bats by David Bowles. And what's really key about this is these are just single entries in each one of these series. So there's a ton of Acorn books, there's a ton of Harper books, there's a ton of Quicks books. And there are books about fort building, and there's books about unicorns, and there's mystery series, and there's books about fairies, and there's books about elves. So much of it is responding to this. This is what they kind of look like with the text. This is a page from Giger. Yeah. Okay, we see the big text. We see they've called out some sight words there. We see the illustration. We see short sentences. What is Giger going to eat for breakfast? I thought it was nuts and bolts, but it's rotten food, which again, for that group, has that mix of humor, really short chapters. So we're introducing them to chapter books. And I also wanted to pull this page out that Harper has made available for 13th Street. And you can see on here, they have responded again to things that we've said. Oh, I wish we wish we had more like this. I wish we had like this. They're saying, look what we're making for you. We are designing these books specifically for this kind of reader. And that is, we know we want to keep them going at this level. So there are so many more, but I've just told you about some from the big publishers, but I want to look at some from smaller publishers now. So this is Astrid and Apollo by V.T. Bedania. As far as this is the first chapter book series featuring a Hmong American family. And Suni Lee won the gold medal this summer. And so I hope we'll see tons more books by Hmong creators. This is the first chapter book series. And it's about a brother and a sister. There's 5 of these out so far, and all of their adventures. And Sadiq and the Bridge Builders by Saman Nurali. And Sadiq is a Somali American, and him and his family have lots of adventures. And Sadiq, his gimmick is he joins all these clubs. But this Bridge Builder one takes place at the library, and it's a building club. So, I mean, it was like made for us. These are both from Capstone, and Capstone is truly and genuinely dedicated to really bringing diversity into this market. And I mean, all kinds of diversity. I mean, a lot of times these books feature like the sibling connection, the whole family connection. Right now in 2021, one of the lines from Picture Windows, they have Emma Every Day, which is about a deaf girl who has a cochlear implant, and the book has ASL finger spelling throughout. And not only are they committed to that, they're committed to recruiting own voices authors to create these titles. I loved Astrid and Apollo. They're super cute. I loved reading about the brother and sister, and I'm obsessed with Sadiq. He's exactly me, joining every club there is. And also from them, these are slightly older. So this is for a slightly older demographic. The text is a little heavier in these. They're a step up, but these are also from Capstone. And this is Farah Rock's 5th Grade by Susan Muadi Daraj. As far as I know, this is the first chapter book series featuring a Palestinian American girl and her family, and looking at their life as Palestinian Americans. It's really cute. Farah is a really lovable protagonist. This is about her making the transition to middle school. And there's 4 of these out so far. And the Girls Survive series, I love these. Again, there's tons of these. There's one about the Oregon Trail. There's one, I know y'all know, there's one about escaping on the Underground Railroad. There's one about Pearl Harbor. There's one about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. And there's this one, which is Mary and the Trail of Tears by Andrea Rogers. This is about the Indian Removal Act of 1830. And Andrea Rogers is a member of the Cherokee Nation. She's a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. All of these Girls Survive series, at the end, they have additional back matter. This one, I've really never read anything like this in the way that it focuses on daily Cherokee life, and then really brings the Trail of Tears to life in an immediate way. But this whole series is amazing. And all 4 of these titles are from Capstone. And again, this connection, this commitment to doing this, all of publishers are doing this, but it's not just the big publishers who have heard about it. So I really want to get all of that on your radar. Who is the best, who keeps the comic industry afloat? If you're in a library, you know the answer to that. If you're not, you say like, I don't know, Iron Man or like Thor or something. And the answer is Raina Telgemeier keeps the comic industry afloat. Raina Telgemeier keeps the comic industry afloat. And the comic industry is finally paying her back. No. Okay, so obviously Raina, books like Raina. I want more Raina. I put these together. These are 3 great 2020 titles that really hit that sweet spot. Twins by Varian Johnson, who is a twin, about Francine and Maureen, who are finally realizing that maybe they don't have to do everything together. Love this one. I've read it twice already. Stepping Stones, the kid debut of noted author Lucy Kinsley, and the first book in the Peapod Farm series about a blended family and stepsisters learning to get along. And I think lesser known than maybe the other 2, but I'm obsessed with them for a variety of reasons. Shirley and Jamila Save Their Summer by Jillian Gortz. Shirley, I just want to say is named Shirley Bones, and Jamila is named Jamila Wahid. You might recognize their initials from history, but they are, Shirley is Sherlock Holmes. And she solves mysteries. She's a kid detective, and it's a graphic novel, and it's a best friend story, because of course it is, because every Sherlock story is the best friend story. So I again cannot get enough of these right here. We're gonna see multiple volumes. I think they said Twins is gonna have a sequel, but for your readers who cannot get enough books, the kids who devour graphic novels in one day, this is really for them. And this is also really kind of your encouragement. We really love graphic novels. They make lifelong readers, but we don't always want to read realistic. So these are some highlights from last year in graphic novels. Green Lantern Legacy. I didn't know anything about Green Lantern except like it was a ring, and like Ryan Reynolds made the movie and it was really bad. But this is Green Lantern Legacy by Min Lei, illustrated by Andy Tong. And it is about a 13-year-old who inherits the Green Lantern power from his grandma. His grandma was a Green Lantern. I loved it. I was so into this. I also think it's just really well written. This is also from the middle grade line that DC has. They have an incredible amount of books for this age of reader that focuses on their comic properties. I think they're doing way better than Marvel. Marvel has started to catch up right now, but there's so many comics written for this age with these characters, and this is really the best of them, but it's also a really great way to get started with this line. And Fun World made me laugh out loud multiple times. Fun World by I'm sorry, I did not practice his name enough, so I'm not going to butcher it here. But he also wrote a series called Sci-Fu, which is really great. And this is about a group of very bad aliens who decide they're going to take over America. They're going to take over planet Earth, and they stage it out of an abandoned amusement park called Fun World. This is a big, goofy, weird sci-fi adventure, really great detailed illustrations, a lot of fun. And also you have to love loser aliens. And City of Secrets by Victoria Ying. This is steampunky, as you might be able to guess from the title. It's about 2 kids who are uncovering the secrets of their mechanical city. And there's a lot of puzzle box stuff in it, really great detailed illustrations, and a good introduction to steampunk for kids who might have never heard of that title, might have never heard of that before, but graphic novels are a great way to dig into it because of the detailed illustrations. So we don't just tell stories about going to school and having problems with our stepsisters. There is still in comics and graphic novels this great range. And so what are some other trends we see? What Lane by Tori Maldonado. I'm obsessed with this book. One thing I want to say right now about this book, it's 144 pages. When I saw it the first time, I couldn't believe how short it was. I wanted to cry with joy because I'm so tired of 800-page books. So this is a contemporary realistic story set in Brooklyn. It's about Stephen, who is biracial and has begun to realize that he can't do all the same things his white friends do because he might get in a different kind of trouble. I loved everything about this book, and I specifically love like everything that Tori Maldonado writes. People are always like, I want more books with boys. I want more books with boys. I love everything about the way he writes, looking at how boys deal with toxic masculinity, deal with like the pressures of being a boy in middle school. And on top of all of that, the conversations he worked in about existing as a biracial kid, I rarely have seen anything at this level done with this kind of finesse without ever being preachy or annoying about it. The Boys in the Back Row by Mike Jung. This handles the very same thing. How do boys develop and grow friendships? It's about two boys who have been best friends and one is about to move away and they have one last adventure. It's about marching band geeks. It's about boys loving each other and not being afraid to say that as friends, as any kind of affection is okay for boys to have. There's a Comic-Con adventure into it. It's really funny. And again, I'm heartened to see more of this happening in this genre. Okay, you know those authors that you're just like, I wish everybody knew about them. For me, May Respicio is one of those authors. This is Any Day with You. I loved, this is about a girl who doesn't want her great-great-grandfather to move back to the Philippines because they're like best friends. It also has a filmmaking contest in it. So I think there's a lot of developmental things with that. But any book that May Respicio writes. She just had a book out this week about slime, kids who are having a slime war. I think she's doing contemporary, realistic, in just like a really great way. And I just wish she had a huger audience. And this one, especially this one, it was such a great book for 2020 because it was a way that we keep our families with us, even if we're not physically with them. Okay, another thing we see happening right now, huge in this era, in this age category, is horror. And I mean horror. I think that we have to remember the ways that horror make this age group. It gives them kind of a feeling of power, disempowered. This is Hide and Seeker by Dr. Herman, and it is scary. It's about a bunch of kids who get sucked into another world, kind of a version of like the Underneath, and are being pursued by the Seeker in a very, very dark game of hide and seek. This one gave me nightmares. I'm a grown-up. It gave me nightmares, but I loved, the kids were really smart. They figured things out on their own, but I also loved the horror in it. And we're seeing a lot more horror, creepy stuff. We call this the R.L. Stine effect, maybe. And I think that one of the things that we remember for this age group is when we're kind of testing our boundaries of what scares us, and also finding that ability to stand up to the things that scare us. And this is a great exemplifier of this, really detailed, really rich language in this. Creepy, so creepy. And sci-fi is coming back. So this is Cleo Porter and the Body Electric by Jake Burt. It is about, believe it or not, and it got published in 2020, a world where everybody lives sealed in their houses at all times because of a disease. And a main character, Cleo Porter, who decides she's going to break that and go out and have this adventure in the world, even though it's really dangerous, because she's going to try to save someone. So this is a really kind of sci-fi dystopia. We kind of see these elements. They were kind of out for a while, but we definitely see them coming back right now. You might think of the olden days, City of Ember. Maybe not everything is as it seems. So that's that we see coming up really again. But as ever, we're going to close on fantasy. 3 exemplary fantasy examples. Eva Evergreen, semi-magical witch, first in a series. A second one's already out by Julie Abe. It's about a girl who has just a little bit of magic and she has to figure out how to use it all or it'll be taken away forever. She goes to a little village and starts helping them with their magic. Many people have compared this to like watching a Miyazaki movie. I agreed. The environment, it's just amazing. And The Barren Grounds by David A. Robertson. This is set in Canada and Robertson is a member of the Norway House Swampy Cree. But it's an amazing portal fantasy, and it's also a really interesting take on animal fantasy as well. And it's about 2 foster kids who go through a portal and end up in a world that's about to be frozen. And along with Aski, I think I pronounced that correctly. I should listen to it on audio. They have an adventure to kind of save this world. It's an amazing take on portal fantasy, but also this had a lot of stuff about hunting, foraging, surviving. So I think there's a lot of crossover for readers who are looking for that kind of book and fantasy. And The Curse of the Night Witch by Alex Astor. I thought this was a really incredible fantasy. It's about a bunch of kids who end up having to go through other stories to try to stop a curse. Of course, the main character has been cursed. And so they end up trying to go through other stories. This really draws from Colombian myth and legend. So this is one I think would have huge appeal to our Rick Riordan fans, our fans of myth, but also like the adventure that goes with like battling the stories. Like I love that kind of meta element of it. I thought this was a really original take and I was really taken by this. So this is the first Curse of the Night Witch, Emblem Island. It also is the first in a series. I think the second volumes of all of these are out. That's another bonus of the backlist. Okay. We're doing this. We're doing this. Take a deep breath. Take a drink of water. Here we go to YA. It's A Breath Too Late by Rocky Callan. I'm going to give some trigger warnings for this. This is about a character who commits suicide, and then in the period after, experiences kind of the impact and the largeness of her life. So I would obviously recommend this to our fans of Kathleen Glasgow or 13 Reasons Why, or the teens who really like this kind of emotional reading that also really takes a serious and honest look at mental health. And as per usual, that is and remains a huge topic in YA. And we're seeing a much wider and more like experimental, diverse, and also honest look at that. I really enjoyed this. And I really think there's a lot of hope in it. This book also has trigger warnings listed in it right at the beginning, which is another thing we're kind of seeing. I really liked this, and it was a unique. Who I Was with Her by Nita Tyndall. So this is about a girl who's not ready to come out as bisexual. She's in a relationship, but it's a secret relationship, consentingly. And then the girl that she's in the relationship with dies, and she's not sure how to mourn her. And because they weren't really like out. And so she ends up confiding really in her girlfriend's ex-girlfriend, because she knows the truth, and they kind of have this connection, and the connection of course builds from there. I thought the writing in this was really evocative. I loved the way it looked at bisexuality. I loved the grief in it. And I love that feeling when you're a teenager of like, I don't know who to tell. I'm not sure what telling even means, about big secrets and big moments in your life. Just really great, sad, a weeper, but also a romance, all our teen hits. Okay, there's two books I've been thinking about all year. They are Not So Pure and Simple by Lamar Giles. This is, again, another unbelievable expose of toxic masculinity. Dell has had a crush on Kiara for the longest time, and he will do anything to get close to her. So he goes with her to church, and he's following her around. And that's when he realizes that because of that, he's accidentally taken a purity pledge. I loved everything about this. It begged to be talked about in a book group. I couldn't wait to talk about it with teens. There's so much to dig into here, because Dell, he's a nice guy. He's not like the other guys. He's a good guy, right? I love the way this book unpacked what that meant, what that looked like. Again, I used to say all the time, there's no books with boys. And this is one of the best books I've ever read, but also I loved the concentrating on how do you perform and act as a teen boy? What is expected of you? Love it, love it, love it. And Parachutes by Kelly Yang. This, every time, here's what I loved about this. Every time I thought I knew what this book was going to do, it did the opposite. And I love that. So parachutes are kids from China who are sent to live and go to school in America while their parents remain in Asia. And the main character in this is that kid. And she ends up saying, Claire is the parachute, right? And she ends up staying in America at the house of Danny. And I loved, you're like, oh, they're going to be enemies. Oh, Danny's going to get with a cute guy. Oh, the other parachutes are going to betray Claire. None of that ever happened, because this book is so much smarter than that. This is a book that looks at so much, but it also really takes a hard, unblinking look at sexual assault. I think this would be a great read alike for the Speak. And also it is a book about standing up for yourself and finding your people who will stand with you. I devoured this. I read it in one sitting. And this is another one. This and Not So Pure and Simple. First, I wanted everybody to be talking about them, but also I could absolutely see them being done in book groups. I could see them being shared with classes. I think there's just a lot to dig into both of these. And they also exemplify the best of what we are seeing being done in YA about these conversations. What is also really, 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 really still big in YA, just like it is in adult, romances with cartoon covers. Romance is still a huge force in YA. I could do a whole presentation on YA romance if you would like me to come back and do that. But I chose this one, Now That I Found You by Christina Forrest. It's about the main character who is trying to make it in Hollywood, and she gets blacklisted, but she knows that she can get back into Hollywood if she can convince her reclusive grandmother, who was a superstar, to accept an award. The only problem is that her grandmother has disappeared. So she decides to chase her grandmother with the guy who saw her last. You're not going to believe it. They fall in love along the way. You'll never believe it. So we definitely see rom-coms, still a huge force in YA, and they're a gateway to lifelong romance readers. Anthologies are huge. I know sometimes you avoid buying them, but I always encourage you to think about picking up a couple for your collection. They are great for when you have to share teachers, kids who have reading slumps, who just want to read a story or two. Readers who aren't as engaged can invest in an 850-page 7-book saga. Read a couple stories. I chose 2 that I think are really great from 2020. Everything Old is New Again, baby. It is 2010 and vampires are back. Vampires never get old. This is an anthology of vampire stories. It's amazing. And also vampires are kind of coming back. So, you know, paranormal, you can never get enough. And this is Foreshadow, which is YA writers sharing stories, but then also talking about why they wrote the story, how they write stories, where they got the idea from. I think Foreshadow would be amazing to use with a book group. I think it would be amazing to take to a high school as an example of, hey, have you thought about using this with an English class? And I think both of these exemplify, there's so much great stuff going on in YA anthologies right now. There's a real expansion of genre, of creators. And I know they might not be like, oh my gosh, they don't fly off the shelves. I can't invest in any of them. I'm not saying you need to buy everyone that comes out, but there are definitely target audiences for this. And especially after the past year we've had, I'm sure that you have heard multiple times, my reading span is shot. I can't get through a whole book. Oh my gosh, what if I told you I had a book of short stories and you only had to read the ones you liked? Or what if I told you I had a book of short stories and you could try one out and maybe you love Heidi Heilig and then you're going to read every book she wrote because you read her book in the vampire. So you can't buy them all. I understand, but I really want to put a plug out for anthologies. And also they're a thing in YA. They are coming out and they're going to continue to come out. There's already been a ton this year, like Battle of the Bands, Up All Night. That was all one night stories. It's a thing and it's going to keep being a thing. You know what else is back? Dragons, dude, dragons. So this is the Blaze Wrath games by Amparo Ortiz. It is about dragons and dragon riders and the Blaze Wrath Cup, which is where dragon riders compete. It's like the Fast and the Furious, but also there's dragons. I mean, I'm going to just keep saying the word dragon like over and over again. This is really great. Of course, our main character in this, Lana Torres, ends up having to really kind of protect the integrity of these games, which are being threatened by a sire, and a sire is a dragon who's been cursed to be in a human form. I really dug everything about this. Obviously, it has a lot of action. It has the dragons have individual personalities, which I really loved. They just weren't like thoughtless creatures. I just dug everything about this. I can't wait for the second one. And again, really this return to fantasy that so many of our teen readers love. And I don't know if I mentioned dragons. This is Ray Bear. Ray Bear is a duology. The second book came out, so it's already finished. If you're waiting to I want to get all the books right now, you can buy Ray Bear and the sequel because it's a duology. Duologies are really in right now too. This is Ray Bear by Jordan Afueco. I think I said her last name right. I'm sorry if I did not. It is an African-inspired fantasy about a young girl named Tara Isai who has been raised to go and kill the crown prince by getting on his court, because there's once you're on the court, you have the ability to kill them. But of course, she has developed a friendship with this prince, and she also thinks that maybe everything she has been raised to believe is not true. I really loved this one. I really loved the fantasy system in it. I loved her coming into her magic. I loved the being torn between, is this the right thing? What have they been keeping from me? So again, I think teens, another huge thing always that we see is that draw to royal fantasy, court intrigue. And I loved the African inspired elements of this one. Okay. This is another last name I'm going to try. This is The Fascinators by Andrew Eliopoulos. This is a really gentle coming of age queer story about three best friends who live in a small town in a universe where magic is real and people have it. And but not everybody has it, and it's not always super big magic. And it's about how they kind of realize how their friendship is changing. I love this because it was a really typical coming of age story, but then it just had this elements of magic woven through it. I think if you have fans of Adam Silvera, especially of What We Both Die at the End, They Both Die at the End, that has that real world kind of mixed with that little elements of magic, along with the coming of age story and the realizing that the people that you thought were your friends are not your friends. The main character is gay, and he's really drawn to his best friend, but his best friend can't be there for him in that way. I just loved everything about this. And this to me was the epitome of a quiet book, and yet really beautiful. And just, I loved it. I just really loved it. I loved the experience of reading this book. So this is Alatsoe by Darcy Little Badger, illustrated by Rovina Kai. And it takes place in a world where all kinds of different creation and existence and systems are in existence with each other. And our main character, Ellie, has the ability to raise the ghosts of dead animals. So her sidekick in this story is the ghost of her beloved dog. And she is Lipan Apache, and so is the author. And this is a mystery because Ellie is trying to investigate the death of her cousin in a town where nobody wants secrets to come out, but it's also a fantasy. It's also a story about grief. It's a story about how we connect and how we let go. It's a story about how we connect with the world. And I know that I said I wasn't going to talk about books that I hoped I was going to try to talk about some books you hadn't heard of. And I know that this book a lot of people have heard of, but it's just truly extraordinary. And again, this is a thing I think that we really want to see and are seeing more of in YA, which is this combination of genres. So nothing is just one thing anymore, right? So it's really like, it's a realistic story, but it's a mystery story, but it's also kind of like this fantasy element. And so I think that's one of the things we're really seeing in YA. And that's why this is the last YA book I chose to talk about. This is one of the, I think, the best YA books I've ever read. So this is The Magic Fish. It is a graphic novel by Chung Lee Wen, and it's so many stories at once. It's a story about Tien trying to understand his parents. It's a story about how much they love sharing fairy tales together. And it's a story about him trying to understand himself. The way that Chung Lee Wen uses colors and different styles of illustrations to indicate the stories are changing. The way it is a story about stories and stories that we tell about stories. I think there's so much in this. It's rich, it's evocative, and it's also really personal and immediate. I think also the use of the graphic novel format takes this to a whole different level. And again, I think this is the kind of thing that YA is really expanding in and towards, and we love to see it. If you haven't read this book, I promise you, this is an experience. It's enchanting, and it will be with you. It will stay with you forever. So I chose this as my last title. I did notice in the chat there were some things about vampires. I didn't mention it here because I didn't have time. But if you have not read The Fell of Dark by Caleb Rowing, it's a queer vampire story. It's so good. It was on my TBR list for like ever, and then I finally read it, and I was like, why was this on my TBR list forever? Super good. Really great. Okay, see, that's why I have to limit it, because we'll just do this forever, because that's just who I am as a person. How do you keep up with all this? You can't. You shouldn't try. No. These are some of my tips and tricks. These are some of the sources I use. The Children's Book Council, hot off the presses. It's a really great monthly feature. They really focus on a lot of small and independent publishers, so I get a lot of ideas from them. Publishers Weekly, I subscribe to the Bookshelf newsletter. They always have a hot off the presses feature as well. And they also have the on sale calendar. You can't always really rely on that, but it's a good place to start. The on sale calendar also tells you how many copies of something they're printing. So you can be like, why are they printing 75,000 copies of this book? They obviously want to get it on the New York Times bestseller list. So I better buy it because everybody's going to be talking about it. That's not, but it is helpful. I also always say, let publishers market to you. They're desperate to do that. I mentioned to you today some of the I mentioned to you some of the imprints. I want to repeat them again. So there's all of these publishers are starting their own comic imprints, right? So there's Harper Alley, there's Scholastic Graphics. They want to desperately tell you about their new lines, right? Especially now. So let publishers market to you. Reach out to them and say, I want you to, can you send me, I'm interested in, I want to learn more about Acorns. I want to learn more about your Easy Reader line. What else do you have? Let them market to you if you want and only how you want. Also, you can ask people. So that link, I mentioned my Twitter. That link, I have a lot. I know a lot of people on Twitter. So I asked on Twitter, hey, did you release a book in 2020 that you feel nobody saw? And like 100 people responded to me. People are desperate for conversation right now. Okay. So you should just ask. You should ask your fellow librarians, hey, what's really popular at your library? Hey, what's really circulating? The next time Greta has a hangout, you should ask Greta. Greta, I'm looking for some vampire books. Can you recommend some? This conversation, how is the best way we sell books? It's by word of mouth, right? So you should just ask people, what are you reading right now? What are you really into? What was the last book you read that you really loved? And not just people, your colleagues, the patrons that you have the chance to still see and interact with. You should ask them too. Hey kids, what are you into? What do you want to find more of? What do you want? Now is the time to try new things. Buy some books you wouldn't have bought before. Weed harder than you would have ever weeded. Now's the time to give the library something fresh, something new. We go bit by bit, but we keep going. So you say, I'm only going to do the 700s, but I'm going to drill down on the 700s. I'm only going to do J fiction, but I'm going to drill down on J fiction. I'm going to really give J fiction a makeover. I'm going to spend a lot on J fiction in this quarter. Then I'm going to do YA. Then I'm going to do the 700s. Go bit by bit, but keep going because you are doing great. That is the one message I never get tired of sharing. I am so awed and inspired and humbled by everything public librarians are doing and have done over the past year. You are doing amazing. I know it feels like you're not doing enough, and I know it feels like you can't do any more at the same time, but I want you to know that you are doing great just by continuing to show up, and just by continuing to care, and just by continuing to think this matters. You are doing amazing, and you are doing amazing things in and for your community. And I want you to remember that, and I want you to hear that if somebody hasn't told it to you enough lately. Thank you so much for having me. If you liked this and you thought this was fun, I did this for 7 months in 2021 and like 8 months in 2019 for the State Library of Iowa. An hour-long monthly books. So if you want, you can go back through and check out my archives. I've linked them here. Check it out for 2021 and check it out for 2019. No joke. I said, we'll take a break off for 2020. What could go wrong? So if you would like to check out any of those, there's like 16 hours of me doing exactly this. Or you can just go through and see the slideshow to see the books that I recommend every month. This is my contact information. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to me. This is my email, my Twitter account, and my too rarely used website. But my website also has information on how you can hire me to do things like this, or invite me to your library, or all kinds of stuff. So it's not updated enough, but there it is. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. That's my Ask Me What I'm Reading shirt from the illustrator Jarrett Lerner. It's not available anymore. I bought it when he had a sale, but he does make really cool t-shirts. And I love it. And every time I wear this, no joke, wherever I go, the guy at the gas station, wherever I go, people say, so what are you reading? Because people want to be asked about this, and you can start that conversation. So ask someone what they're reading. Thank you so much for having me. You're going to have an amazing summer. Thank you to Greta for inviting me to do this. I think that's everything.